wild world of Wii, few creatures are as reviled as the minigame compilation. They're like vermin, they're small, they're annoying, and they spread quickly, but if you follow their regrettable lineage, you find it can be traced back to one peculiar specimen with white fur, elongated ears, and certifiable insanity. You may hate the genre, but don't hate the originator. It's RAYMAN, Raving Rabbids. And although thousands of Wii minigame compilations have since infested the landscape, the originator is still one of the best. RAYMAN Raving Rabbids was one of Ubisoft's 2 launch titles for Wii, and though its conceptual birth was as a prototypical Rayman platformer, Ubisoft eventually found that to be a somewhat limiting template. See, this was the earliest era of Wii development, and the potential for motion control was at an exciting apex. With more ideas for controls and gameplay concepts than they could fit within the mold of a platformer, Ubisoft shifted gears. The result was the very first Wii minigame compilation. That's right, thank Ubisoft. Ultimately, the bold decision to turn what was supposed to be Rayman 4 into RAYMAN Raving Rabbids had both benefits and drawbacks. Now, one could speculate about whether or not a platformer with less but more focused gameplay concepts might have been a better choice, akin to the whole less is more argument, but you know, I think the game actually benefits from its unrefined exuberance. This game really captures that launch window excitement, that magical feel of what seemed possible with motion control. And although there are moments in which a bit of polish and perhaps a singular focus might have been beneficial, the chaotic feel of RAYMAN Raving Rabbids actually plays a big role in its appeal. Of course, so do the Rabbids. Another benefit of the game's evolution into a minigame compilation is that the format allowed the real stars of the show to take center stage. Let's be honest, as successful as his games have been, Rayman has never been the most appealing or memorable character. But when his designer, Michael Ansel, developed the concept of the Rabbids as a possible enemy for Rayman, he knew he was onto something. They're charming, they're designed well, and perhaps most importantly, they have a very distinct sense of humor. The game's format highlights the Rabbids, and the motion-based minigames themselves aside, the Rabbids are a big reason this game was such a success. So kudos to Ubisoft for recognizing the appeal of the Rabbids and allowing them to essentially upstage an established mascot. What's unique about RAYMAN Raving Rabbids from a structural perspective is that, unlike many other minigame compilations, the game actually feels like an effort focused on the single-player experience. Whether it's deliberate or not, it's sort of unavoidable. You have to play through the game's single-player mode in order to unlock its individual minigames for multiplayer play. Speaking of benefits and drawbacks, the single-player mode is tied together well. There's a story about Rayman being captured, there's a nice continuity to the experience, but really, minigames are best experienced in multiplayer settings. Strangely enough, that's perhaps the weakest aspect of RAYMAN Raving Rabbids. Many of the minigames aren't even compatible with simultaneous multiplayer, and there isn't much of a focused or intuitive multiplayer mode. Fortunately, the minigames themselves are generally very good. They're actually much better than the forgettable 20-second bursts so common to the genre. The on-rail shooter modes, in which you shoot incoming hordes of Rabbids with plungers, is perhaps the highlight of the package. In fact, it's so enjoyable, it perhaps could have been fleshed out and sold on its own. And then, of course, there are the nearly 70 other minigames. And although some of them fall flat, they're generally longer and more involved than anything a game like Mario Party has to offer, not to mention much funnier and more stylish. Whether you're extracting worms from a rabbit's rotting teeth or slamming the doors of rabbit-occupied porta-potties. For multiplayer in particular, the game's mixture of humor and fun gameplay makes it an absolute riot. But for all the things that make this game so enjoyable, it's still a minigame compilation, and it's still on Wii. And with that comes plenty of inherent negatives that are inevitably going to turn some people off. There's no online component, and even stranger, there's not even support for 480p. But ultimately, those things can't keep the Wii classic RAYMAN Raving Rabbids from hitting the bizarre mark that it's shooting for. And it does so with a plunger.